Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Are you going to root?
Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.
If you want to share a screen, then you can.
Krishna Prabhu.
Get started, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. We can't see you, Prabhu. You know, turn camera.
Sure. And see now, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Start with your Abhinanda. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Lava Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Lava Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Lava Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajana Nandana Yashoda Nandana Amunatira Savanjari Yamunatira Savanjari Yashoda
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday morning Bhagavatam class. So today we're reading from Canto 1, Chapter 6, text number 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Premati Bhara Nirvinna Pulakangoti Nirvritaha Ananda Samplave Lino Napasyam Ubhayam Mune Premati Bhara Nirvinna Pulakangoti Nirvritaha Ananda Samplave Lino Napasyan Ubhayam Mune Premati Bhara Nirvinna Pulakangoti Nirvritaha Ananda Samplave Lino Napasyam Ubhayam Mune Premati Bhara Nirvinna Pulakangoti Nirvritaha Ananda Samplave Lino Napasyam Ubhayam Mune Premati Bhara Nirvinna Pulakangoti Nirvritaha Ananda Samplave Lino Napasyam Ubhayam Mune
Premati Bhara Nirvinna
Premati Bhara Nirvinna Pulakangoti Nirvritaha Ananda Samplave Lino
उभयं मुने
नापश्यम् उभयं मुने
प्रेमातिवर निर्भिन्ना
प्रेमातिभर निर्भिन्ना
कांगोवति निवृता
पुलकाङ्गोति निर्वृतः
आनंद संप्लवे लीनो
आनन्द सम्प्लवे लीनो
न पश्यन् उभयं मुने
नापश्यम् उभयं मुने. Anyone on the Zoom would like to recite?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Good.
Go ahead,
No.
Prabhu.
Good, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Premati bara nirbinna
प्रेमातिभर निर्भिन्ना
lakangoti nirvitaha
पुलकाङ्गोति निर्वृतः
ananda samplavelino
आनन्द सम्प्लवे लीनो
napasyam ubayam mune.
नापश्यम् उभयं मुने. रविंद्रनाथ प्रभु.
प्रेमातिभर निर्भिन्ना
प्रेमातिभर निर्भिन्ना
पुलकाङ्गोति निवृतः
पुलकाङ्गोति निर्वृतः
आनन्द सम्प्लवे लीनो
आनन्द सम्प्लवे लीनो
न पश्यम् उभयं मुने.
नापश्यम् उभयं मुने. माताजी.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु. प्रेमाते भर निर्भिन्ना
प्रेमातिभर निर्भिन्ना
पुलकाङ्गति निवृतः
पुलकाङ्गोति निर्वृतः
आनन्द सम्प्लवे लीनो
आनन्द सम्प्लवे लीनो
नापश्यम् उभयं मुने.
नापश्यम् उभयं मुने. Thank you so much. Synonyms: prema, love;
प्रेम लव
ativara, excessive;
अधिभार
nirvinna, especially distinguished;
निर्भिन्ना
pulaka, feelings of happiness;
पुलका feelings of happiness
angaha, different bodily parts;
anga different bodily parts
ati nirbhrittaha, being fully overwhelmed;
ati nirvrita being fully overwhelmed
ananda, ecstasy;
ananda
samplave, in the ocean of;
samplave
leenaha, absorbed in; na, not; apashyam, could see;
Apasyan Kushi
ubhayam, both;
both
mune, O Vasudev. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: O Vasudev, O Vasudev, at that time, being exceedingly overpowered
being exceedingly overpowered,
by feelings of happiness,
feeling of happiness,
every part of my body
every part of my body
became separately enlivened.
became separately alive.
Being absorbed
Being absorbed
in an ocean of ecstasy,
in an ocean of self,
I could not see
I could not see
both myself and the Lord.
both myself and God.
Any devotee like to read the purport?
Spiritual feelings of happiness and intense ecstasies have no mundane comparison. Therefore, it is very difficult to get expression to such feelings. We can just have a glimpse of such ecstasy in the world which we know. Each and every part of the body, each of our senses, has this particular function. After seeing the Lord, all the senses and things that we have been present service into the Lord, because in the liberated state, the senses are fully efficient and certain. As such, in that transcendental ecstasy, so happened that the senses became separately to serve it. This being so not only lost himself in sin, both himself and the Lord's hand.
Prabhu, you can see my screen on the Zoom.
Yes, Prabhu.
I'm sorry. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टां स्थापितां येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथं नितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिसे नमः। पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूप स्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताक्षं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to discuss this very beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. I seek blessings from all the senior Vaishnavas assembled here. Please bless me so I can speak something useful for all of us. So just to give a recap from the previous verses, so this is the chapter of conversation between Narada Muni and Srila Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva is inquiring about the previous life of Narada Muni, and Narada Muni is describing so for the verses that we have seen so far. Narada Muni describing his past life as a young boy, as a boy, son of a maidservant. So in due course of time, so his mother passed away, and then he's alone. So he had the association of the Bhaktivedantas when his mother was serving them, and he got the instructions from the Bhaktivedantas, and now he's following the instructions, and he's passing through many forests, many agricultural lands, many different places. And then eventually became tired, and then he came to on the shore of a lake. He took some water, then he sat down under this banyan tree. So there's a picture here. He sat down under the banyan tree and meditated upon the Supreme Lord in the heart, okay? Paramatma in the heart. And so in the last verse, we saw that he went up to the stage of bhava, right? So there are these 9 stages of devotional service described in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And so he went all the way up to the 8th stage, the bhava, devotional ecstasy, right? So just to recap these 9 stages, last week Mataji, Amaradhika Mataji explained this very beautifully. So we start with the Kanishta Adhikari, neophyte devotee, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Vajana Kriya. These are the 3 stages usually Kanishta Adhikaris do. And then when one develops further faith in the process, then and as one makes progress in the spiritual life, then anartha nivritti happens, removal of offenses. Then nishtha, which is the firm faith, steadiness in bhakti comes. Then ruchi, the taste for the holy name, taste for Krishna comes. And then asakti, attachment to Krishna. So this and then when one goes even beyond that to Uttama Adhikari level, then develops the symptom of bhava, the ecstasy, devotional ecstasy, which is what Narada Muni is experiencing in the previous verse, in the verse number 16 that we just discussed last week. And then the highest stage is prema, the pure love of Godhead, which is very, very rare. Only very few pure devotees of the Lord have that. And here there is a nice analogy between these 9 stages and the 6 stages of conscious evolution. So you might have seen this before. This is from Taittiriya Upanishad. So this body is made up of, we go from gross to subtle. So the gross body is made up of these 3 different kosas, or the cells, you can say. The grossest one is the Annamaya kosa that we see, the material body. Then there's a Pranamaya kosa, which is the, you see as the energy, life as the energy. And then Manomaya kosa at the mental platform level. Okay, so these are still just at the gross material level, consciousness level. And when we go even more subtle, more deeper into the construction of the body, then we find that we have 3 other more subtler elements, which are the transcendental consciousness. One is Jnanamaya, the life at the knowledge aspect, and then Vijnanamaya, the self-realization aspect, and eventually the Anandamaya, the pure love, the pure bliss stage, right? Satchidananda, that's the pure soul, Satchidananda form. This bhava and prema, they are at this highest stage, at the pure soul level, and the other four for the Kanishtadhikari, the other 3 for the Kanishtadhikari stage are still in the Jnana level, and then the 4 from Uttamadhikari are the Vijnana and self-realization level. So this is a very nice analogy you can use to understand these 9 stages of bhakti. Okay, so this is what we discussed in the last class. So today the topic is about happiness. Okay, so everyone is seeking happiness, right? Every one of us is seeking happiness. We know it or not, but we are all seeking happiness. Now, there is a big difference between the material happiness versus the spiritual happiness. There's a nice picture here showing the spiritual happiness as the real happiness, as like the real flower here, and the material happiness is the perverted reflection of that. So you get some taste of the happiness, but it's not the actual, not the full happiness that we experience. So to understand the spiritual, so what Narada Muni is experiencing in this verse is the Ananda or the bliss, the spiritual, he's experiencing the spiritual happiness, right? So to understand, in the purport, Prabhupada says that it is there is no mundane comparison to that happiness that Narada Muni is experiencing. So in order to understand what happiness is experiencing, just to get a glimpse of that, we have to first understand what exactly is material happiness, which is what we all experience in this life. And then going beyond, slowly and slowly, we can try to understand, when we go beyond that, then what could the spiritual happiness be? I mean, sometimes we get glimpses of spiritual happiness, but most of us are not always in spiritual happiness, right? I mean, yeah, maybe some of you are. So if you are in the spiritual happiness, then you are already in the stage of the bhava stage, which is what Narada Muni is experiencing. But so first, let's understand what's the difference between material happiness and spiritual happiness. So in the purport and elsewhere also, Srila Prabhupada says material happiness is a construct of the mind. So material happiness is at the level of the mind. Remember, we discussed this, all these different kosas, the different cells. So we have the Annamaya, then Pranamaya, then Manomaya. So Manomaya stays. So that's where the material happiness is happening, there or below. It does not go beyond that. Okay, so everything is happening on the mental platform. And this way is very easy to understand. We can take some examples to see how material happiness is just a construct of the mind. So let's take an example of taking shower. We all take showers every day, every morning. So in the summer, you feel like taking cold shower when it's very hot outside, 100 degrees, 110 degrees. You feel like taking cold shower, right? You don't take hot showers usually. So, so we take cold shower, we enjoy that. And then in the winter, when it becomes freezing cold, let's say below 32 degrees, going below 0 even. So there, that time you don't feel like taking cold shower, right? It will be pain. You'll take hot shower, right? So now the body is the same, the skin is the same, the water is the same. So it's just the perception. So again, this is actually at the mental level, the perception which gives us the pleasure, happiness. In one case, the same substance gives happiness. In another case, that same substance gives us distress. Okay. So this changes this perception changes with external circumstances, the temperature, external temperature, right? Either hot or cold. So depending on that, we feel happiness or sadness. So depending on external circumstance. So again, so this is just a construct of the mind. Another example you can take, so this example Prabhupada gives many times. So in the desert, you see the camel. The camel is eating some thorny twigs. This is, I think, cactus or something like that. So you're eating some thorny twigs. So as the camel eats these thorny twigs, its tongue, it gets hurt by these thorns. It gets cut, and then it starts to bleed. And then that blood mixes with this thorny twigs. So when it keeps on chewing it, it feels the taste of the blood. And you say, oh, it's so nice. It feels so nice taste. But it's actually tasting its own blood. It's painful, right? But it seems pleasurable to the camel. So actually it's painful, but it seems pleasurable. So that's the situation in most of the cases, like the material happiness that we get. In most cases, it's actually painful. If you analyze it carefully, it's painful, but seems pleasurable. So again, this is a construct of mind. The mind makes you think that it is pleasurable, but actually it is not pleasurable. It's painful. Okay. And take another example. People who go to extremes, take intoxications, drugs, alcohol, whatnot. So it's just an illusion. They get high. They feel that okay, we're actually in bliss, but actually it's just an illusion. Because once that gets down, then they come to the real suffering. And of course, it also has other side effects and the harms to the body and so on. But the mind thinks that this is actually good. This is illusion. This is just simply illusion. And we can understand the different types of material happiness by looking at Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, where Krishna describes the happiness in 3 different modes of nature. So this is just a product of the 3 different modes of nature. One who is in mode of goodness will experience happiness in the mode of goodness. One is in mode of passion, experience happiness in the mode of passion, and in mode of ignorance, we experience happiness in the mode of ignorance, right? So, so what are these verses? So we have, I think 18.37 to 39. Yes, and the first one is the mode of goodness. Yattad agre visamiva pariname amritopamam tatsukam sattikam praktam atma buddhi prasadajam. That in the beginning it feels like poison, but at the end it feels like it is nectar. That's the happiness in the mode of goodness. Examples: getting up early in the morning. Initially it feels painful, right? But eventually it's beneficial, right? We get get our sadhana done in the morning. Then we have so much time, whole day you can do your daily activities. So we get, in fact, not just in the spiritual life, in the materially, very successful people, many of them, they're actually early risers. And there is statistics on that many of this is, CEOs of the big companies and so on. So they're actually early risers. They do most of their work done, productive work done during the early morning hours. So it's not just for spiritual, but also for material benefits. So, getting up early in the morning is good, but initially it feels like painful, right? Or taking shower in the morning. So that, especially in the winter, it might feel painful, but it has a lot of benefits, right? Taking a shower in the morning. So these are all examples of happiness in the mode of goodness. Initially, it might seem painful, but eventually it's beneficial. It feels like nectar. And it awakens the self-realization and satisfaction. And then happiness in the mode of passion is just the opposite. Initially, it feels nice, but actually, in the end, it's painful, like this camel chewing the thorns. So that's the next verse in Bhagavad Gita, 18.38. Visayendriya sanjogat yatta tadagrem amritopamam pariname visamiva tatsukam rajasam smritam. Right? It is derived from the happiness is derived from the contact of senses and sense objects. That's the happiness in the mode of passion. It begins like nectar and ends in poison. And Prabhupada in that purport gives example that the best happiness in the material world that people think of is usually sex life, but that's actually in the happiness in the mode of passion. It feels initially, the boy and girl come in contact, they are very happy, they're roaming in the dream world and so on. But as soon as the marriage happens, then done, all the happiness gone, and it eventually ends in distress. So. And then in the mode of ignorance, it begins with poison, ends with poison, in between also poison, and sometimes you go to prison also from that. So that's in the mode of ignorance, right? and this blind to self-realization throughout the illusion and born of sleeplessness and distress. So these are the three different modes of happiness in these three different modes. So now, so this is at the philosophical level, I understand it. But now, if you talk to, for example, a neuroscientist, they will say that happiness is just all about chemistry. It's just chemistry of the brain. Okay, so it all happens through some signals in the brain, and we have these four chemicals. Don't know if you can see this. The four different chemicals, which are called the happy hormones in chemistry. You have the dopamine, or the oxytocin, endorphin, and serotonin. These are the happy chemicals. So when you feel happy, and then the brain releases these chemicals actually, and that's because of that you feel happy. That's what the chemists or the neuroscientists would say. In fact, when people get depression, so they use these chemicals to treat they create drugs which will release these chemicals in the body, in the brain, and that will so that is used as antidepressants. There's one particular drug based on this serotonin is called SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibition. I don't know if you've heard about this. This is a big industry in pharma. So they use this kind of drugs, these SSRI drugs, which are used as antidepressants. They basically what they do, they release this serotonin. So yeah, so these drugs, they just release the serotonin, and then you feel like one feels happy. But does it really work? If you ask this question, does it really work? Can even ask the doctors who really prescribe these medicines, and they'll say, okay, it works to some extent. To some extent, it works. But actually, if you analyze it carefully, it is again just a construct of the mind. That's the point I wanted to emphasize here. Okay? This again, and this is scientifically proven that happiness is just a construct of the mind. And there is a very beautiful set of experiments done by one Harvard professor, Irving Kerr, which is called the placebo effect. Don't know if you have heard about this placebo drugs. Placebo is something that it's not a real drug. It's just basically sugar candy, but you give it like as a drug. So to the patient doesn't know what it is. So outside it looks like a drug. You just say, okay, this is your pill, antidepressant pill. Somebody who's feeling depression, take it and use it. And they just eat it. There's no serotonin, nothing there. It's just sugar candy. But they feel happy because they're thinking that they're taking this drug, so they're feeling happy. This is called the placebo effect. Okay? But then one could argue that, well, but the actual drug has some side effects, but this one doesn't have side effects. So the patient will know eventually, right? That I'm not getting any side effects. So that means it's not a real drug. So what they did in this experiment, they put even some side effects into that sugar candy. They added some chemicals just to get some side effect, like, dry mouth or dizziness, whatever can get from other chemicals. So they just put it in there. There's no serotonin at all. Just put these things and give it to the patient. The patient, oh, I'm feeling very happy after some days. So this is a proven experiment these guys have done, so it just you get same result by using the actual drug and not using using a fake drug. So it's just a construct of the mind, right? So that clearly proves that what you get is just a perception of the mind. The drug has very little effect actually. So this is scientifically proven. Okay. Moving beyond that. In the this is a slide also used in the corporate world, this is called the happiness framework, right? So the x-axis is the time, how long the happiness lasts, and the y-axis is the happiness, how good or how happy you feel. So on the bottom left is happiness derived, what you call the temporary happiness. It's derived from just for own pleasure. This is called the rock star happiness. That is just a fleeting happiness. You chase for some short-term goals, right? Chasing some short-term goals. It's mostly for selfish interests, and this is the typical happiness that people seek in life, right? A very short-term happiness, and very soon they get after that. After this is over, then you go into the low phase. And then a little bit higher than that is happiness that's driven from passion. Somebody who is very, very passionate about doing something, like the sports stars. They really train very hard. They want to, they want to get to that stage. They want to get Olympic medals or whatever, want to break the world record and so on. So they work very, very hard to accomplish something high, some lofty goal. Okay. And something that you really, really care about, accomplishing something in life. So that gives you better happiness than this fleeting happiness, getting some small thing. So this gives you better happiness, but again, this is just for self, right? This is happiness centered on the self. So this is a little bit better than the previous one, but not the best. And even better than that is happiness derived from some purpose. When we are feeling part of something bigger than our own self, right? So let's say we're serving some company. In a company, you have a team goal. So the happiness that you get by accomplishing that goal to get all together, that's a bigger happiness than just accomplishing something by yourself for your own purpose. Since this is Bhagavatam class, I replaced that with a devotee picture. So we also get this happiness when you serve in a mission. Right? So we have this mission, ISKCON. So as a team, when we serve in this mission and propagate the goals of this mission together as a team, then we get better happiness. That you get better happiness than what we get just by doing something ourselves, right? So these are the three different levels of happiness. So going higher. So the goal is to go from the bottom left to the top right. That's the rising levels of happiness, higher happiness. But again, so most of the happiness again is still at the material platform. But what Narada Muni is experiencing here is even beyond that, much well beyond that, toward unlimited happiness. So he's experiencing this extra spiritual ecstasy, which is the unlimited happiness. So what is this unlimited happiness? What is the spiritual happiness? Again, so the conditioned souls cannot really realize this happiness in general unless they're blessed by the Guru and by Krishna. But we can get a glimpse from Narada's example. We can get a glimpse of what that unlimited happiness could be. So there is this verse again in Bhagavad Gita 5.22. which talks about this. And what is that verse? Yahi sansparsada bhoga dukkha yone evate adi anta vanta konteya na tesu ramate buddha. Adi anta vanta. So all the material happiness, it has a beginning, it has an end. Adi anta, right? Beginning and an end. So the intelligent person understands this, that all material happiness, which is derived from the sansparsada bhoga, derived from the contact with the sense objects. So they all have beginning, they all have end. And so the wise man does not take delight in that happiness. And they look for something beyond. Look for something beyond the happiness derived from material senses. And that is unlimited happiness that Narada Muni is referring to here. So in the purport of that verse 522, Srila Prabhupada gives two another verses, very beautiful verses, which explain this unlimited happiness. One of them is from Padma Puran. It's a very famous verse. Says, Ramante yogino nante satyanande chidatmani iti ramapade naso param brahma vidiyate. So Ramante yogino anante. Ramante means they enjoy, take pleasure in anante, unlimited. Ananta means unlimited, right? So in the unlimited happiness. And what is that unlimited? Satyanande chidatmani. So they meditate on the Supreme Lord, and from that they get unlimited happiness. Because the Supreme Lord is unlimited, he is Sachidananda Vigraha, right? So he's unlimited, blissful form. So when the yogis, they meditate on that unlimited blissful form, they derive that unlimited happiness. So that's how they, and that's why. So one of the names of Lord is Rama. Rama means like Ramate iti Rama, right? So Rama means one who gives unlimited pleasure. Unlimited pleasure to the devotees is Rama, right? And there's another verse, very beautiful verse. It comes in Bhagavatam in Canto 5, Chapter 5. This is the conversation between Rishabdev, King Rishabdev, and his 100 sons. Right? So Rishabdev is explaining to his sons just before he departs to the forest. He gives very beautiful instructions to his sons. And what he says this very nice verse: Nayam deho bhajam niloke kastan kaman arhate vidbhujam ye tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam suddhed yasmad brahma shokhyam tu anantam. Again, this comes. So brahma shokhyam. Shokhyam means again happiness. Sukha. So from sukha comes shokhyam, right? Brahma sukha. This again in Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhut Prasannatma stage, right? Brahma sukha. So when one derives this transcendental happiness, Brahma shokhyam tu anantam, again unlimited. That's the unlimited happiness. So what he says in this verse, very beautiful instruction. He says, there is no reason to labor very hard for the sense pleasure. Nayam deho deho bhajam nuloke. Why? Because that's available even to animals, right? It gives examples of pleasures are available to even bidbhujam. Bidbhujam means one who eats stool, right? One who eats stool, who eats hogs. So this sense pleasure is available even to the hogs. So there is no reason for us to strive to get that sense pleasure. It's automatically available to every animal, right? And in one of the lectures, Prabhupada explained that this hog that is referring to here is actually the city hogs. You know, there are forest hogs, the wild hogs, and then the city hogs. The forest hogs, they're a bit more elevated. They get to eat good things. But the city hogs, they eat garbage, right? They have nothing there, so they eat garbage. And that's what he's referring to here, the city hogs. He's instructing a palace, right? He's in a city. So he's even an example of the city hogs. So that's even to them, the sense pleasure is available. And with that, they don't have to strive for, they don't have to work 9 to 5, have 2 different jobs and so on, go here, go there, run around. They just enjoy them. They just enjoy, without any effort. So what's the purpose of the human life? The next verse says, Tapodivyam putraka yana sattam. Tapodivyam, austerity, do austerity. Okay, so that's the goal of human life, right? Undergo penances by which your existence will be purified. So there, existence will be purified, and then as a result, what will happen? You get Brahma Saukhyam, unlimited happiness. Okay? You'll be able to enjoy this unlimited transcendental bliss. So that's the goal of human life, right? To go beyond this material happiness and then get unlimited happiness. In the purport also, in the translation also, Narad Muni, when he's explaining this, so it is said that he's experiencing this, his senses become enlivened. Right? So what do you mean when senses are material, right? So what do you mean the senses become enlivened? So what happens in spiritual happiness? What happens to the senses? And that's explained here. That senses, they become fully enlivened. They become fully awakened. So right now our senses are working at a limited level. So it's not to the full capacity. But when all the senses are engaged completely in the service of the Lord, then they're fully awakened. They're fully functional. So the example is, this is the picture here, which showed this. We have these 5 senses of perception, 5 senses of knowledge, right? So the 5 karmendriya, 5 gyanendriyas, 10 senses. And so when all the senses are focused on Krishna, then that's the ultimate perfection of the senses. Then the senses are no longer material. They become spiritualized, right? And the particular word that we used in this verse, in the actual verse, is pulaka. So that's what happens to the senses. Pulaka, the Sanskrit word, it means, I don't know if there's a direct English translation. It's like getting goosebumps or getting and hair standing on the end. So that's the rough translation of pulaka. Pulaka means you get the senses, they all become ecstatic. And there's so in other places also we see this word pulaka. It's a very nice song by Narottam Das Thakur, where he uses this word pulaka. Goranga bolite habe pulaka sharira, hari hari bolite nayano bahenira. So pulaka sharira. He uses that word. When you stand Goranga, when will that time come when I'll stand Goranga and get these ecstatic symptoms in my body? That's what Narottam Das Thakur is praying for, right? So this pulaka. So that's very important word here, right? So all the senses become enlivened. So when all the senses become fully awakened, then they all are eager to serve the Lord. So all the senses, they are eager to serve the Lord. So the eyes, they're eager to see the form of the Lord. The ears, they're eager to hear about the Lord, to hear the glories of the Lord. Then the touch, the sense of touch, that's eager to do service for the Lord. The tongue, eager to taste the tulsi leaves or taste the prasadam of the Lord. And the nose, it is eager to smell the fragrance that's offered to the Lord. So all the senses, they become engaged in this in Lord's service, right? There's very beautiful pastime in Ambarish Maharaj pastime in Bhagavatam, right? Canto 9. where it is described how Ambarish Maharaj engaged all his senses in the service of the Lord. Sabe mana Krishna padara bindayo, bacham se vaikuntha gunanu varnani, right? That's a beautiful set of verses. That his mind was on the always on the meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna. His words was describing the glories of the Lord. His hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord. His ears in hearing the words of the spoken by the Lord or about the Lord. His eyes in seeing the deity form of the Lord, and his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the devotees. His sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of the tulsi offered to the Lord. His tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. His legs were engaged in walking to the places of pilgrimage, holy places, temples of the Lord. And his head was engaged in bowing down to the Lord. All his desires were engaged in serving the Lord 24/7. And that's the reason how he could conquer all his senses. And when Durvasa Muni came and he offended him, but he did not get offended at all. He was completely self-controlled. He was completely controlled, completely dependent on the Lord. All his senses were engaged in the service of the Lord, right? So that's how he could overcome even the power of Durvasa Muni, who is otherwise very, very powerful sage, right? So that's the perfection of the senses, the spiritual enlivening of the senses that Narad Muni is talking about here. That when all the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, then that's the full function. All the senses are fully functional. And then he says that the Lord, then he could not see the Lord and himself, right? At the end he says, I could not see the Lord and myself. And why he could not see the Lord and himself, that will be described in the next verses. And I won't give the spoiler alert here. But here there's a very, very subtle point that Narad Muni is making. He's saying that I could not see myself and the Lord. He's distinguishing himself from the Lord. So sometimes, this verse, if you listen to, or read about the purpose of this verse written by the Mayavadis or written by the other philosophies, they will say that, okay, it's because he's merging into the Lord, so he could not see the Lord and himself. Everything became one. But that's not the point he's making. He's clearly saying, I'm not seeing myself and the Lord. He's distinguishing himself and the Lord. So even when all the senses become fully enlivened, still, so we do not become God, right? Because for God, any sense can do the activity of all the other senses. But even when our spiritual the senses become enlivened, the eye can only see, the eye cannot hear for us, right? So that's the difference between the Jivatma and Paramatma again, right? So even when the Jivatma becomes perfect, still there's a difference between the sense of the Jivatma and the senses of the Paramatma. The Paramatma can do everything with any sense. And we sing this, right? In the darshan prayer, Angani jasa sakalendriya vritti manti. Any limb can perform the activities of any other limb. Angani jasa sakalendriya, like any limb can do anything, any other function of any other limb. The Lord can eat with his eyes. So when we offer the bhoga, the Lord is not eating with his mouth, he's eating with his eyes. He's seeing the prasadam and he's accepting the prasadam. So he's eating with his eyes. But the jiva cannot do that. Even when the jiva is perfect, jiva cannot do that. So that's the difference, right? So it's very important to understand from here that this is a point, very subtle point Narad Muni is making here, that jivatma remains jivatma, paramatma is paramatma. They cannot become one. Okay, that's an important thing, right? Okay, yeah, there's some quote here, so I'll just skip that. Okay, but one could ask this question. So when we say that, okay, you have this material happiness, it's at the mental platform and it's just illusion. So how can you say that even when you are, in the spiritual happiness, it could also be just an illusion, right? How do you know that this is the real thing? I mean, how do you say it's a real thing, right? We could get this question, right? I mean, so when we're doing Krishna consciousness, so you say that, oh, you enjoy this unlimited happiness, but how do you know that it's unlimited happiness and how it's not just a mental illusion? How do you know that? Any thoughts on that?
Happiness?
Yeah.
I mean, my personal belief, understanding is that, first of all, this happiness, even though it decreases sometimes, because, sometimes it might not necessarily follow strictly, at least there's something that is sustaining it over a long period of time that we just remember, oh, this is something more.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. So this happiness that we derive from spiritual things, that is sustainable. You see this very, very senior Vaishnavas in our society, right? They've been serving their whole life, 40 years, 50 years. they're serving. So if unless there is something they're getting out of it, why would they be staying in that moment for so long, taking all the hardship? It's not like they're enjoying in a nice palace or something. They're traveling from place to place. They're preaching to people. They're taking so many hardship. Like Srila Prabhupada took so much hardship just to spread this message. Unless they're deriving something out of that, they would not be sustaining that. Right? You can do it maybe once or twice. You can do it, but not forever, not for life. So that is sustainable. Yeah, that's a very good point. Sustainable. And there are a couple of other points you mentioned that increases. This happiness increases, and we all can feel that, right? When we came to Krishna consciousness, how many of years, X number of years ago. So whatever feeling we had, now hopefully we all have better feeling, right? Otherwise we won't be here, right? We have better feelings about this process. So the happiness, the spiritual happiness increases, okay, over time. Whereas material happiness is the opposite. It decreases, it's fleeting, right? It decreases. So that's how we know this is a real happiness, right? Which is increasing with time. As we make progress, it increases more and more. And the other is very scientific. This happiness is very scientific. Anybody who follows this process sincerely will get the same result. Will be happy, right? So it's not just for some select people that only those people will be happy. The selected people by God, and only they can be happy. Other people have to be miserable. It's not like that. Anybody who follows this process, just take this process sincerely, they can become happy, right? So it's reproducible. This happiness is reproducible by anybody, right? So that's why so this is the real happiness, right? And overall, eventually, okay, this is authorized by the great devotees of the Lord, who perfected their lives, and they have prescribed this for us. So we follow the Mahajana Jasagatasya Pantha, right? So we follow the footsteps of the great authority. And the great authorities, they have derived happiness from this process, and they tell us that this works. So we have to have trust, we have to have faith that this really works, and we just have to follow it and be patient, and then it will work eventually. Right? So that's how we know this is real happiness. Okay. So then the next question would be, can we really experience this bliss like Narada Muni did? Can say, oh, this was in Satya Yuga, Narada Muni, he could do some meditation, he could focus so nicely and so on, but we cannot do this, right? We are so much distracted. It's a Kali Yuga, right? So can we get the same benefit? What do you think will be the answer? So if Narada Muni was thinking that this is not useful for us, he won't be speaking to us, right? And this Bhagavatam is for us, for the Kali Yuga people. So at least Narada Muni thinks that this is useful for us, and he's one of our acharyas. So if he's thinking it's useful, then it must be useful. But how do you understand that it's useful? Of course, we cannot just follow the same path as Narada Muni. We cannot just travel alone in the forest for many days and just meditate on some banyan tree. Maybe there's no banyan tree left anymore in the world. So, but we can still experience this bliss, right? We can still experience this bliss, and Prabhupada promises that yes, we will. If we follow Prabhupada, if we follow the instructions of the spiritual master and the acharya, we will experience this. It might take some time. For somebody, it might happen tomorrow. For somebody, it might happen after, I don't know, 10 years. For somebody, it might happen after in the next life. Who knows? But it will happen. So you should have the faith that it will happen eventually, right? And we even see that, right? The spiritual bliss we even see in devotees. There are some devotees, like this picture, you see that they certainly blissful, right? They're certainly very, very blissful devotees, right? So people, the devotees can do experience bliss. And we also get this glimpse of this bliss sometimes, right? When, for example, when you hear some ecstatic kirtan, we get this glimpse, right? We feel that happiness within. I mean, we all have experienced this. Listening to some very nice class, or listening to or seeing the deities, seeing the form, very beautiful deities, very nice decorations. So you get some bliss out of that. So you do get glimpses of bliss. It's not constant, but yeah, but we do get it. So it's real, right? And there is a nice instruction. So this is from one of the lectures by Srila Prabhupada, where he says that the process is slightly different for us compared to Narada Muni. So here we have to follow this process, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. This is the first verse of Shikshastakam. So that's the process we have to follow. Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhavamaha, Davagni Nirvapanam. And at the end it says, Param Vidayate, Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So that's the process that we have to follow in this age of Kali, right? Not like going to secluded place and doing meditation, but following this process of chanting the Hare Krishna. And simply by chanting this, one can cleanse his heart of all dirty things. And as soon as the dirty things are moved, then you become liberated. And when one is liberated, one experiences this spiritual bliss. So that's the process. One last comment. So there is again very nice instruction by this is conversation with Maitreya Muni and Vidura in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Maitreya Muni says that how one can get the transcendental bliss. He's answering this specific question: how one can get the transcendental bliss in this world. And he says, Yat sevaya bhagavatah kutastasya madhudvishah ratirasho bhaveti praha padayor vyasanardhanah. Tibra, that's the transcendental ecstasy. So by serving the feet of the spiritual master, one is enabled to develop transcendental ecstasy in the service of the personality of Godhead. So that's the process. By serving the spiritual master, by following the instructions of the spiritual master, one develops that faith in this process, and that leads to this transcendental ecstasy. Then, so that's the process for this is. Okay? Even for Narada Muni, he followed the instructions of his spiritual masters, right? So whatever Bhakti Vedanta, whatever mantra they gave him, whatever instruction they gave him, he followed them strictly, and that's how he was able to please the Lord. Right? So not by own accord, by following the instructions of the acharyas, one can develop get this transcendental ecstasy. Okay, so I think I'm out of time, so I'll stop here. So if you have any questions or any corrections, I might have done some mistakes, so please forgive me, and please, we can have some discussions. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted to say one thing when you talked about just a comment, it's not really a question, but we talk the SSRI medications.
Right.
I look with psychiatric patients.
Right.
And it's funny because some people have been taking these medications for 30, 40 years, but they're trying to find this bliss and this not bliss, but like they're trying to find some kind of balance,
right.
Mental, psychological balance.
Right.
With this medication. But that never happens because it works for some period of time, and then your mind or brain naturally modifies accordingly, and it just you always have to catch up, increase those switch medications,
right.
Until at some point it's just like you said, it's happiness actually it's a mental state of mind, it's not necessarily
because of the drug.
Chemical balance. Right. I mean, once you can say the chemical affect the mind, but the root cause is not the chemical.
That's right. Yeah.
So thank you.
That's point. I heard this from one of the devotees who is actually a psychiatrist from ISKCON Harrisburg. So he was describing this point, and he mentioned about this effect of the placebo effect that the Harvard people did. So he was explaining that. I found it very interesting, and this is something that's appealing to. I mean, when you talk to intellectual people, they would not believe us with just a philosophical points that okay, happiness is the construct of the mind. They say, what is the proof? And this is a scientific proof that it is the construct of the mind. So in this way, we can explain to them. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhu. Prabhu, with regard to the hello.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah, with regard to the placebo effect, you're referring, right? Like it is just the mindset that okay, we have taken some good pill with regard to this, then it's automatically it gets cured. So, what is the context with regard to the spiritual journey, Prabhu? Like, what is the context with regard to the this verse, Prabhu? Like you're trying to tell.
The point here is that the material happiness that we get, that's just a function or the arrangement of the mind. It's an impression. It's a mental impression. But the happiness that Narada Muni is explaining here, that is beyond the mental platform. That is on the spiritual level. So that's what I was trying to explain. So first, once we understand the material happiness, because that's something that we're all familiar with, right? We all experience happiness time to time. So once we understand that the worth of that happiness, then we can understand how to go beyond that, right? So that's what I was trying to explain. And somebody can ask, what is the proof that the material happiness is is from the mind? It's not something real. And that's what this experiment is proving, that it has nothing to do with the drugs. Sometimes, okay, maybe the drug works for some time, but it has other side effects and other things. But even if you don't take the drug, real drug, you just take a fake drug, that's the placebo, just sugar candy. Still, the patient got the same effect. The patient feel that okay, they got a better sense, they felt happy after taking that's a fake drug. So there's no chemical there, but they just felt happy. That's because at the psychological level, they're thinking that I'm taking the drug, so I must feel happy.
Yeah. Yes.
I
Yes.
don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So does this also communicate the message that material happiness is illusion?
Yeah. So this, in some sense, this is an illusion, right? So the patient thinks that I'm getting happy, I'm taking the drug, but actually it's not a drug, it's some fake pill, but he's still feeling happy. So again, so it's an illusion. Yeah. Right.
Question.
Yes, bro.
Thank you so much for some nice presentation.
Hare Krishna, looks like Prabhu got disconnected.
Yeah, looks like he is got disconnected.
Prabhu, so we want to stay on the call, Prabhu, or?
Maybe they don't want us to hear some secret talks there.
I think I'm